What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day this finds you. I am feeling like caca and trying to get over the sickness, which always puts me in a great mood. Thanks, Ryan, for the sound and audio check, or video check. Why are you guys not showing up in this one place? Great. Let me just... bear with me just a second. Why it's doing that? Well, strange. Ugh. One thing after another, I swear. Let me just try something here. Yep, nope, that's not working. Let me see. So I'm obviously getting on a little bit late. I'm trying to walk my brain through this. Oh, I see. I know what I might do here. I don't know if this is... audio should be fine. It must be on your end, Joe. I'm not sure. I cannot get you guys... I might not be able to bring you guys into the... Oh, there we go. Now it works. Okay. Whoop. There it is. Whoop, whoop. There it is. All right. I think I'm ready to go. Hey, everybody. I'm Sean from RPG Sean, formerly of Gaming MBS. Stream every Saturday at 8 a.m. But it's Sunday, Sean. What's going on? So yesterday, let me do roll call quick. So Eileen, good to see ya. Ryan, good to see ya. Joe, good to see ya. Sunday in Detroit, yeah. Shambot, Laramie, morning. Tad, Ryan, Matt, good to see ya. All right, probably have less than what we typically have for a turnout on live streams today. So yesterday I was on a honor flight with my father to Washington, D.C. And yeah, interesting experience. I'll say that. Andy, good to see ya. Phil, good to see ya. Oh, happy Thanksgiving. Hey, is it Canadian Thanksgiving already? Happy Thanksgiving, Canada. So, yeah, honor flight. Long day. An experience, I'll say that. If you're not familiar with what an honor flight is, it happens in a few states, not all, but it's a program put together typically of 100% of volunteers. Nobody gets paid. And there are tons of people that have to be involved because what they do is they coordinate with the airlines, food service, airport, community. It is to put 80-ish veterans on an airplane to Washington, D.C. And in Wisconsin, we do a one-day trip. we ran into some folks from Nevada where they go out for 4 days. I have to think that it's because of the travel time. So from Wisconsin to Washington, D.C., it's like a 2-hour flight. So you could literally get up in the morning, go there, arrive in D.C., drive around to like, God, I think we must have went to 10 memorials, and then fly back. So to pull that off with veterans that are typically over 65, soup to nuts, is an ordeal. So and the way it is, there's an application process. If you're a veteran, having served in certain eras, we had a World War II vet, one World War II vet, and then the rest were like Korean War, Vietnam, is kind of what they're up to as far as timeline goes. And so you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You go to the airport by 4:30. Your wheels up are by 6:20-ish. And then you come back from Washington, D.C. You drive around Washington, D.C., spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a memorial, take it all in, take pictures, and then fly back. So, yeah, if you have and it's free to the veteran, typically, free for the veteran. So they apply, and then they say, yes, you're on this flight. And then there's a big orientation day that takes about, 4 hours to go through orientation, to go over all the details. And then the event comes, and then you go and you do it. So that's it. Yeah, it was definitely an experience. Which, being a veteran, like most, so you have the veteran, and then you have the escort, I guess, is what I would be considered. I can't remember what the formal name is. I think it's like an escort, but and that person doesn't leave the veteran's side and wheels them around and counts for them. Tidbit, at least in the Wisconsin one, spouses are not allowed to go. Not sure the rule, why, but spouses don't go. So it can be any other family member, friend, whatever. But I went with my father. So, yeah. So that was yesterday. That's why I wasn't on stream. Getting into RPGs. I didn't have the kind of typical rigmarole kind of scheduled for the stream today. Put it together this morning. I don't know. I don't know if I want to talk about that stuff. So I'm kind of wheeling and running this one a little bit fast and loose, and some people will appreciate that, and some people will, that's not what they tune in for. So I'm certainly flexible, but I don't know. Insert mill spouse joke here. Yeah. Wow. No joke. Military spouses, man. They've, we sometimes give them credit and sometimes we don't. We probably don't give them enough credit because being a military spouse is freaking no joke. Like, it's just, there was one woman on the flight she was our bus captain, and her father was a Vietnam veteran, and so she was a military brat, and military brats tend to move around. That's what we refer to them as. And they move around a lot, and her father passed away before he was able to go on an honor flight. And so part of her reason for doing some of the coordination and being involved is to give back and, what have you. But she would, she mentioned on the bus, like, we'd sometimes wake up, my sister and I, and Dad wasn't home for 2 days. And, that was just the way it is. And we didn't know where he was, but that's, that's the deal. So fast and loose, just fine. Hang loose today. Yeah, okay. One vote for fast and loose. I'm interested, like, what do you guys want to talk about in RPGs? What's been picking your, like, I don't have an open forum very often on this stream. And I don't know, maybe I should. I sometimes grow weary of the kind of product-based kind of focus. Like the news is one thing. Like if there's something going on in the hobby that's a little, I think people should know about, or um, but much of it is like, well, here's the bundles and here's crowdfunding and here's like what's coming out in print, and it's all about product within the hobby, but not there's so much more, right? But there's also like, I don't know, 1,000 RPG podcasts out there that talk about some of the things that we rehash. And it's probably the one biggest hurdle about redoing or coming back is gaming and BS, which I've mentioned and maybe hinted in the past. Like Brett would probably be interested in doing it again, but I'm like, what are we going to talk about? Like, I don't know. I don't listen to Fear the Boot. I brought them up before, and I bring them up again only because they've got, I don't know, 600, 800. I don't even know what episodes they're up to, 1,000. And it's like, geez, what are they rehashing over 1,000 episodes? And I know you can do that because opinions change, new things become available, styles of play, new products come out. So there's a lot. I mean, you could talk about probability of dice for, a couple episodes, but I don't know. I have a coworker that volunteers as a nurse for Honor Flight. Yeah, that's cool. We have obviously a big medical component that comes along. That there is one of our, not to cite, I'm going to be obviously very stream of consciousness, but one of the medical guys sat across from me on the bus, and his name was, they called him Dr. Jeff. I don't know. I guess he's a doctor. He seems like, to me, like I'm getting to the age where it's like everybody's younger. So I'm like, what? That guy's a doctor? Yeah, they are. So he looked just like Scott Grimes. If you don't know who Scott Grimes is, if you've watched Band of Brothers or ER, he's the redheaded guy. He's been in other movies too, but those are the two that stand out. He looked just like him, and I turned to him and I said, "Hey, Jeff, do you get a lot of people that like say, 'Hey, you look like Scott Grimes'?" He's like, "All the time." Well, of course. So pile on. I got a picture of him, and I sent it to my sister because my sister's notorious for running into famous people. Like she runs into, who'd she run into? Michael Bolton somewhere, and she got a picture with Michael Bolton. And then she went golfing, and she got a picture of Cameron Diaz. And she went golfing today, ran into Cameron Diaz. But it wasn't really Cameron Diaz. That was the joke. But she kind of looked like her. So in this case, I got a picture of this gentleman, and I'm like, hey, look, it's Scott Grimes. He's our medic on this flight. Anyway, Orville. That's right. The Orville, too. Hey, Kevin. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So, I mean, and I should pull up a picture. It's on my phone. I could probably transfer it, but dude. And then my sister's like, who's that? I'm like, get out of here. So the joke's completely lost. Anyways, let's talk about RPGs. I apologize. I think there's an interesting gap between in-person play versus VTT play and how the gameplay and GMing diverges. Ooh, that is a lot to unpack. I like it. I have no idea who that is, but Salthar, you are saying that's the pilot guy. He is the helmsman. Yes, the redhead, yes. I even told my dad, I'm like, hey, Dad. He's like, who's that? And I'm like, here. And I showed him a picture, and he's like, yeah, he does. It was make it more obvious. Interesting gap in person play versus TTT play. Here's the deal with that. We'll say virtual play because this is a good topic. I like it. Thanks so much for bringing it up, Andy. And I'm interested to hear you elaborate a little bit more. What's up, Matt? Is today Saturday? It is not. So if you wake up tomorrow thinking it's Sunday, you're in a lot of trouble. So I've been able to play more games than I ever have only because of virtual play, right? And virtual play, I would say, is defined as just not being in the same room. Physical space, in the same room, playing. I wouldn't say face-to-face because that's even weird. And then IRL, which is weird because, you're not playing in real life, or is it imagination? So I think there's an assumption of like IRL is, sitting in a room face to face. But then if you're playing virtual, you're not face to face. Like we all have our backs turned to each other. So all my gaming is virtuals these days, except for conventions. And some of us might not have a choice due to our situation. That could be living in a place where, there's not a lot of gamers. Our friends are somewhere else, or our game group is all over the place. We've met people online and formed a game group. And therefore, we just, from the get-go, none of us were local to each other. So there's that. And I say that because I think that's where it's got to start. Because then what happens, which is I'm sure Andy's referring to, is like the virtual tabletop, which gets even further there. So you can play exactly like you would play when you are face to face. Exactly. Might be a stretch using that word, but you can mimic very closely your gaming experience, whether you are in the same room or you're not. Mileage may vary. And some people will argue, no, you can't, Sean. It's not the same. And that's fine. And I get it. And it's not the same for them. And I totally understand why. Because like when I go to Jeff's, which I was supposed to go to today, but our game got canceled. And frankly, I'm feeling like dog crap, so I probably wouldn't go anyway. But when we go there, Jeff and his wife lay out a spread. Some of us bring stuff, right, to add to the spread. And then between like a situation where we're kind of like the problem is provided to us, and then we kind of hash that out. And while we do that, we might even between turns in a melee combat, we go and, munch, right? You don't get that. And then as they munch, you talk to that guy as he's munching, and then the other person's at the table doing their turn, right? So that's different. That may not be a similar type of capture. That's not an experience you can capture necessarily virtually. But you can see each other, you could hear each other, you can have virtual die rollers if you want to see other people's dice. You could still roll at your desk. So, for example, Phil McClory, who's in the chat, part of the Thursday night game group that I've kind of gone back to, I guess. He is not, I'll speak for Phil. he's not a tech guy. So he doesn't want like a lot of overhead with VTTs and tools and all that stuff, okay? But so at the same time, he plays virtual. So he ran us he's run Mothership for us. He's run Lord of the Rings 2nd edition. Or the One Ring, I should say, 2nd edition. And the only thing he had to do was share a screen to show a map, okay? Other than that, he didn't care if we rolled the dice at our desk. As a matter of fact, I was trying to find virtual dice roller. He's like, "What? You don't have regular dice at your desk?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, I got it. So I got them right here, right? Got it." And then if you have if you have a game master who likes to do miniatures and terrain and maps and all that stuff and put it down on a table when you're physically together, okay, great. Right? Some of us like to get out the miniatures and it becomes more tactical, especially if you're playing like old 3.5 or Pathfinder and there's flanking and moves and, whatever. Great. Fantastic. It's great. And if you want to transpose that experience to the virtual tabletop, great. Fantastic. It's awesome. It's there. Dynamic lighting can even add things to it, shadows, and then even line of sight, right? Like you physically have no line of sight to this other miniature, where in the real world you could just look and see on top, like, yeah, I don't have line of sight, but I can see around the corner what's there because the whole map is divulged, or the whole terrain is divulged. So virtual tabletops can add an element that sometimes physical space, it becomes a pain in the butt, right? Fog of war, stuff like that. But you don't need all that. So to Andy's I'm interested, Andy, in when you're talking about the differences in your mind. What is changing from being in the physical space and playing an RPG game and then going to virtual tabletop? Because what happens, I think, sometimes is that, and I'm guilty of it, is that we get into virtual tabletops and it's like, oh, sweet, I got to put in tiles and, oh, come on, this keyboard, I'm just going to just blow it up, I swear. We put in tiles and tokens, and we like, oh, it's cool, and we can measure out spaces and everything, when we may not have ever really done that at the physical table, but we feel compelled to because I've got Forge, and it's a great software. It does a lot of stuff for me. It's so awesome. Keeps track of all my notes, and I can click on NPC stat blocks and reference them very quickly instead of paging through the book. It just depends on how the game master's managing that. And sometimes they manage it well, and sometimes it falls apart because it takes them longer to futz with the tool than it does than if they were playing face-to-face, here we go again, face-to-face or in person at the table. I think I know what you're talking about, but I don't want to speak on your behalf. So RPG Exile, good to see. I love virtual gaming. I've met so many cool people. Also met a few numpties. Numpties. Oh, I got to put that into my vocabulary, repertoire. But to be honest, it's quite rare. I think it's rare too. I think if you're in some circle, I think like there's people that are deathly afraid of playing with people they don't know. And I think a majority of people are pretty on the level. I think if you got 5 people, you're probably going to have 3 to 4 that are like, okay. And even if like those 3 to 4, maybe one is a little quirky, they're quirky, but they're not like harmful, malicious, like angsty, they're not disruptive to the game. And usually sometimes with those individuals, they can be good gaming people, right? But maybe you don't, you would never have like a beer after work with them or something. It's just like we have a relationship that's gaming and nothing else, and that's cool. But I think a majority of people in the hobby are pretty on the level, seriously. And I think generationally, that may change and fluctuate, like depending on what the gaming experience wants what you want out of the gaming experience. But I don't think it's because they're a-holes or something, right? Like, hey, say for example, I'm playing with a younger person, and they want a particular experience out of gaming, like whatever that means. Like it could be they want lots of options, and they want to very customize their character to be something where in my game that I prefer, maybe it's all human centric, and that's what I would like to have. Maybe there's a middle ground, but if that person wants that and I want this, then it's not a fit. But it's not because I don't get along with them, right? I do miss hosting and having the spread. I'll probably go overboard this next weekend because of that. Sweet. Definitely a different energy face to face that virtual can't match. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. That may be true, Phil. I don't think the gap is as wide as it probably once was. And there goes my camera again. Every freaking gestures, moves around. If I hold up my hands, I gotta really disable that thing. Yeah, sanitize the dice. 2 people in our group are amazing bakers. Dangerous. Have I time traveled? What's up, Flint? Tomorrow's Monday, by the way. Don't forget to wake up and go to work if you are so employed. That's another thing I'm having a great time with because now I'm unemployed. So, yay me. Add that on to sickness and, yeah. Agree. I used to host all the time, but people just got lifted and moved for various life reasons. Like and subscribe. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Good to see you, Nelson. I haven't played online for a while now. I've been thinking of getting a Sunday night game going, but haven't pulled the trigger. Online is so much easier to fit into a schedule. There are definitely ups and downs to both, for sure. And it's all personal preference. It's like the scale, it's the levers, it's however you want to kind of put an analogy to it, but it's, well, I don't like gaming virtually, but then I don't have to drive. I could just turn on my computer, you know. Our old group would get together at lunch, eat and hang out, play for 6 to 7 hours, and have dinner together. But that was 10 years ago. Those of us still local don't have that time. Yeah. Our current person group DM uses virtual maps. He projects onto a TV, and we use physical minis atop it. High speed. Good to know. Matt, last time I gamed virtually was over 15 years ago. It didn't last very long, unfortunately, but I enjoyed it. And 15 years is a long time. Like, 15 years ago was like Skype, maybe, right? Like, we use Skype because there wasn't anything else. And then now, who uses Skype anymore? Doesn't even exist, right? It's like Teams, right? Oh, whatever. So it's come a long ways, Matt. Oh, I'm excited. I have a coworker starting a gaming group with all women players, and everyone but her has never played before. Oh, very cool. Jason96. What is this indeed? That is the ultimate question. Jason96, if you're looking for video RPGs, wrong channel. That's down the hallway to the left. This is tabletop. So if that helps you any. Andy Saws, you're right. Virtual play can be viewed pretty broadly. My experience recently is playing via VTT, and I find the VTT mechanics drive the gameplay, and it could get set player expectations. Yes. Right. Agree. The VTT, I think, if you implement one, because it depends on how you use it, because you can use a VTT is like, here's what you see. The same way you would plop it down on a table, you could plop it down on the screen for everybody to see. Some may say, well, just share your screen. Sure, you could do that. Either way, the end objective is fulfilled, right? Or accomplished. It's when you start getting into, hey, everybody go to the VTT. But that's one, somebody could say the same thing when they set up miniatures. Like, okay, let me unveil my $1,000 of Dwarven Forge. Ta-da! And then it's like, everybody stand up, look down, move your miniature. Okay, it's your turn. Hold on a second. The DM turns around. He's got a bag next to his chair. Plop, 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 plop. Boom, plops down 5 other more miniatures. This is what you see now when you enter that room. Like, all that's, if you don't like miniature play at the table, then the virtual tabletop's not going to be it could make it easier, but it's not the play you're looking for, right? If you're used to, back in the day, we would have a miniature, it would sit at the table, we wouldn't do anything with it. We never used miniatures tactically. Not all the time. Because not everybody had them. Like, we'd have like 2 guys bring a miniature because they painted their character, and it was like representing their character, but it was more of like an avatar icon boink on the physical table. Like when I played with Jeff and we played AD&D, we would sketch out the map, and then we would go like, here's your first initial of your character's name. Where are you? I'm over here. Okay, right here? Yeah. There goes my camera again. Yeah. And then you would just draw a little circle with the person's character's first initial in there. Okay. And that would be like the extent of the tactile or tactical experience as far as, wherever, positioning, if you will. But so some would say, a virtual tabletop is so awesome because you could like do dynamic lighting and shadows. And again, like, I was on that wagon for a while. Like, I'm going to do Curse of Strahd. And if the players come up to a door, they can't get past it because it is physically locked in the VTT. And the way they have to unlock it is they have to explain that the door's unlocked. You can't even go past it. Okay, I picked the lock. Great. You succeed. The game master, chooses to unlock the door in virtual tabletop, and then the people can move in. I wouldn't even. Sometimes I think like don't even give the player characters oversight of their token. Where are you? I'm gonna be right here, and they ping the map and they on a square, and you put their token there. And then it becomes more dialogue. So it depends on the style of play. If it's all like dialogue and you don't need, it's all theater of the mind, then you don't need a virtual tabletop. But some game masters, I don't know, they don't like doing that. I've played with some people where it's like, I need to better understand, like to be on the same page with you, game master, and frankly with the other players, I need to see what you're talking about. And the tricky thing about all this is you're going to be with like 5 people. So is everybody going to want the exact same thing? Probably not. So where's the happy middle ground? And that's where you have to compromise. And if that middle ground is too far on one end of the scale, is it too far for you? And if it is, you either got to just buck up, buttercup, and play and, complain in the shadows, or you got to find a different game group. Or you talk it out and hash it out with your game group and say, hey, can we do like less of this? But then, what's the majority look like and all that stuff. Without virtual play, I would play very seldom. Yeah, me too. We're playing like once a month. I do think, though, that there's other local game groups that I could probably roust. I mean, I was playing with Doc every other week. They play every week, but they alternate games. So I think it was like on their alternate week at one time. So I could probably play every 2 weeks, one game. But, yeah, man, I don't know. Laramie says, I prefer in-person, but my home group has been online since 2018. Many parents, so we could do bedtimes and jump online. Yep, for sure. 2 of the folks at my current In the Flesh game refuse to play online. Why? I need to know why, Ryan. What is their explanation? And it's not to say that they're wrong. I'm just curious as to why. Because sometimes we get people that don't want to play online because that's not what they're signing up for with role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, which I get. I think it's more, my humble opinion, I think it's a little more pedantic because I think back, like, tabletop RPGs, even though if you play virtually, some people still think it's, if you're playing virtually, it's a computer game. And it's like, no, it's really not. There are other folks that don't like to play because they're technically challenged and they hate dealing with the tech. Like, oh, here you go, stupid Zoom doesn't work again. But I would say that it's gained so much ground that, yeah, you still run into a problem, but I don't know. I don't think they're as bad as they used to be. Daryl, good to see you. First time, last time. 32 years for me. Thanks for showing up. 32 years for you having played role-playing games, tabletop? Oh, dude, you got to get back into them if that's the case. Thanks for showing up. I'm Sean. I used to host a podcast called Gaming and BS, and a majority of the folks that are in the chat, I know from that podcast. They're members of, that community. Play all kinds of tabletop RPGs. I get on here and talk about on Saturdays usually. So you caught me on a Sunday because yesterday I was busy. So that's kind of who I am. If you wanted to know, and if you didn't want to know, well. What's up, Reading Aid? Good to see you. Matt says, yeah, I was in the early days of Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop. We used Yahoo Chat for communication. Man, we used RPG tools. RPG tools for the VTT. Like, I think PC Generator might have been around still, which is like some old looking UI, let me tell you. And then I think we used, at one point we used Skype. We didn't use video, just audio, which is another experience. That was way back. Had to have been after 2000 for sure. Maybe 2010. I don't know. I ran an all-girl group for 2 of my daughters and a coworker, aside from myself, that is. Phil says, I've never gamed that this much my entire life. I have virtual to thank for that. That is a major pro. See, so as much as Phil, I pick on Phil because he is very obvious in our group about how he feels about some of this stuff. So it's big of him to say, hey, despite all of my grumblings, it has brought me this. So I can appreciate that, Phil. Thanks. Yeah, man, I remember using Screen Monkey and what even was the voice chat we used, right? When I first started playing virtually, I felt I needed to use all the toys. Now I feel freer to use some things and leave other things out. I don't mind drawing a map if I can't find it on the VTT. Yeah. All right, Laramie's gonna push back on me. I don't do minis in person, but I use them on VTT. Interesting. Why? Like what's the difference? Because it's like, oh, I don't have to buy all the miniatures and lug them everywhere, and then I have to pick them out. Like the VTT's easy to search. Is that the reason you use them on the VTT and not in person? What's up, Wayne? No question of the day. We're freewheeling today. So, Andy Hall posed Andy mentioned, I didn't know. We're kind of on a topic and running free and loose, fast and loose, free, fast and loose. That's the tabletop RPG I want to come up with. Free, fast, and loose. And he was mentioning the disconnect between in-person and virtual tabletop gaming. And so we've kind of spread that spectrum around on what that all means. That's what we're hashing out. Like Laramie mentioned. Eileen says, I purchased a large collection of minis from someone a few years ago, and I haven't used any of them. Gonna have to do something about that. Yeah. I have I used to buy D&D minis. I used to be a collector. I used to play the skirmish game. Archfiends, Angel Fire, all those Underdark, all those miniatures, booster packs, random, by the case, 2 cases if I wanted to try to get the complete set. I've got tons of miniatures. I use none of them. 0. As a matter of fact, one of the things I want to do is sort them, put their cards together, and then sell the sets. I don't even know what I can get for them at this point. Theater of the Mind was the standard for most of my early groups. We drew a map when it was thematically called for and rarely used minis because we didn't have any. Yeah. It was expensive back in the day when you're talking about miniatures being made out of lead and pewter. Now it's here's a Reaper Bones Kickstarter where you can get I don't know, chip in $100 and you get 1,000 miniatures. I don't even know what it is. Now they're plastic and they're unpainted, but I guess I just don't run tactical games anymore. I'm the same way. Too much overhead for me. Sometimes it'd be cool. If somebody's hey man, I want to run a short arc of Pathfinder, original Pathfinder or something. All right, well, let's roll with it, but wouldn't be my first choice. Of all the times I have to cut out early, loving this topic. All right, see you, Joe. Thanks for stopping by, dude. Wayne says, I feel that the quality of play is relatively equal. I think my quality of life is a little less. Yeah. Less online. Fair. Sean, so now it's talk in person, virtual hybrid. So now let's talk in person / virtual hybrid. Oh, okay. So are you talking about are you talking something like this, Laramie? Okay, we got our game group. When we game, we sit at the table, we're going to play, but everything else can be done virtually, right? out of character, downtime, blah, blah, blah. Is that what you're talking about? The other minuscule details that you want to still cover in your RPG that you don't want to do necessarily when you meet, but you want to do it outside of that. Regarding players online, one just refused, even during the so Ryan's going back to prior. He's like, I have 2 players that just refused to get online. And I'm like asking why. So this is trying to keep it all cohesive for you folks. It says regarding players online, one just refused, even during the pandemic. The other played during quarantine, but still didn't like it. I think they find it too impersonal. That's a comfort level there. That's just plain comfort. Like, I mean, part of my job at one point in time was calling people every day and setting up Zoom calls. That's what I did, right? As my profession, working from home. So like getting on a Zoom call and hashing things out for 30 minutes was like the norm. I don't know if not everybody's in that same boat. So it's like, I could see that. I could see like, I've gone into work even during the pandemic. We didn't work virtually. And so virtual calls, FaceTimes, Zoom calls, video calls, they're just not in what I do. So when they do it, it's a weird interaction for them. I could see that. Phil says, haha, technically challenged. That is my MO. I need that patch. Hey, Mike. Good to see you. Thanks for supporting the channel. Much appreciated. Paper, pen, dice. Minus all technology. Printed maps. Heresy. Are you saying pen, paper, dice minus all technology or just all technology? Printed maps, heresy. Tad says in-person games IGM usually feature minis, but remote games are conversational and sharing images and sometimes combat using Owlbear Rodeo. Good to know. Tad, just so I don't know if I should out you. I'll just say Tad has worked in the video game industry. It's always interesting to see the dynamics. Bandwidth challenge, yeah, for sure. Reading aid. If it wasn't for VTT, I'd never be able to play. My friends don't want to play, and there's not enough interest in other RPGs except for Pathfinder or D&D in person. Yeah, there's that component, right? Like, how many people are in the BS Landia Discord? Okay, BS Landia is from the Gaming and BS kind of rollover from the days of the Gaming and BS podcast. That's where the community kind of hangs out. How many people are on there that literally have all their own home groups, but yet they still play with other individuals on that server? And probably the biggest reason, I don't have factual statistics to back this up, but I think the majority of people that play with each other on the Discord, from the Discord server, is because they get to play games that their home group is really kind of adverse to playing. So that's another thing, a virtual tabletop that's like, or virtual, because that's, there's virtual playing and there's virtual tabletop. I think those have to be separated. Yes, you can use a virtual tabletop to play. You can use a virtual tabletop to play in person, but it is a tool. Like it's like a dice tray, a dice tower. Like it's just another tool to use, whether you want to or not, whether it's in person or online. Like that's, so I will say that, game groups, man, the dynamics, I tell you, right? Like, I don't want to play anything else. I'm kind of struggling with that myself, because Jeff and those guys want to play certain games. They never would play half the stuff that's in my library, and that's all right. But if that's a point of contention for me, you got like one option, two options. I get buck up, buttercup, and kind of go with the flow, or you gotta go moonlight. That's the big one. Jason 96. I'm home now. Well, hey, congratulations. I'm home now. Jason, can you please let us know when you get home? I'm home now. Good. I'm glad you got home safely. I kid, but okay. TTRPG, aka D&D, is what I'm interested in. So this is this live stream might be for me. Yeah. Well, I will say this: if you are looking for D&D specifically, probably not the greatest channel. But if you're just like interested in tabletop RPGs that do like is universal, depending, it doesn't matter. It's like more system or game agnostic. Then you'll probably see some nuggets here. So no worries, you're still welcome, man. And if this ain't your jam, hey, that's okay. No big deal. I will say this, Jason, and some of this, one of the things that I do want to make clear, because I think if somebody that is a big D&D 5e advocate or fan, and they come here and they're like, hey, they don't talk about D&D 5e as much, that is just a warning to you. But I will say this, I'm not a big fan of bashing other games, okay? So, like, while a majority of the chat may not be, like, playing D&D 5e, they're not the champions of 5e, if you will. Many of us have played it. Some of us have decided to play other games. But I don't tolerate like somebody coming in here and telling somebody D&D 5e sucks. Okay, so just as an FYI to you. Okay, Laramie says, Sean, yeah, not having minis is probably part of it. Also drawing maps is some of it. And he's talking about like how he uses the tools, yada, yada, from up above. Also drawing maps, some of it. Also, I don't really play tactical games. So while I use minis and a map, it's more reference than tactical. Right. And I get that. I think that's where I like to be too. Like, I don't want people counting squares, but it's so hard. I'll tell you what, the one thing you can do, hot tip, if you're using a virtual tabletop and you don't want people to count squares, AKA be more tactical, don't put a grid down. Could use zones maybe, just don't put grid. The minute the frickin' squares come out or the hexes, people are counting those suckers. Like, can I get there? It's like, how much is a square? Just, and then some people are like, whoa, Sean, like Bob Wiley, whoa, like don't remove the squares, man. That'll throw me way off. I need squares. I like squares. I like to put something in a square. That's okay too. I was super into tactical play, but lately I've transitioned over more role play style of play. Yeah, see, you're growing, man. I call that growth. Growing. Expanding the mind. You can't dislike something if you've never tried it, in my humble opinion. You could have a preference, but, this is like just like eating different kinds of food. To Jason's point, not to put him on the spot, but like, hey, if you were used to being tactical all the time and you're like, you know what, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. Is there like theater of the mind? What's this all about? What? You don't have to draw out a map. You don't have to put little tokens or miniatures down. Oh, I am interested in this. And then if you try, like, I don't know, that sounds like it sucks. But if you try it and then it sucks, then I think, hey, I think you just have more credibility. But if you're like, hey, I think it sucks and there's no basis for it, that's different. If you have a preference and you say, hey, I prefer not to do that because it's not my jam, or it's not, or I prefer to do that because I like getting out all the stuff, all the, miniatures and the maps and things, well, then that's fine. That's cool. It's all wording. Sometimes I think we express things, what we mean to say and how we express those things don't always jam. And then something gets lost in translation. And then it's like, then you get into all kinds of goofy online verbal onslaughts of you're doing it wrong. And, I hate that. That sucks. Roger, welcome. I run an in-person game weekly. I have run campaigns online and we'll do it again, but I don't care for it. It just feels like there's more of a connection between the players. That's fair. I think it's one of the bigger, larger discussions, topics of why people don't like to do virtual. I get it. Like some of us, that's what we like. we play these because we want to go to a game group. Some of us have grown up that way, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's not going to change. Like if that is when virtual reality comes along, you can put on goggles and then you could literally see the person in the same room. Even then, people will think, well, then I got this stupid thing on my face or glasses or whatever it is that is facilitating that. And I want you to think like holodeck, Star Trek holodeck experience. Like we fire up our holodecks. They're all networked. We all see the same thing. We go into a virtual room and it's right there. Maybe that is as close as to in face or face to face in person gaming that may get away from that lack of personalization. But that's way out. Oh, it's not too far down the road. Yeah, it is. Like I don't see virtual worlds being that advanced that quick. Right now, everybody looks like meeples, as far as I know. So, welcome and thanks for the input, Roger. I appreciate it. Shambot says, if the tactical element adds tension to the gameplay, then I can get behind it. Otherwise, I feel like grid tactical play can slow things down too much and take people out of the game. Yeah. Andy Hall says, it's interesting how over time our play in person or in virtual adapts or slashes matures or changes. I've been shifting away from tactical combat as well. I think, here's the thing. If it's one thing I've learned in my career is that things change. We may not change. We may not think we change. And change is weird for some people. Like, I don't like change. I don't like finding out who moved my cheese. Who moved my cheese? What is he talking about? Just Google who moved my cheese. Change. You'll find it, the reference. And I assure you it's safe. But we are different people when we are 25 than when we are 45. We just are. We've experienced different life experiences. We've gone through different things, good and bad. Some of those things impact us more than other things. And I also think that can carry over to gaming. And sometimes it may not be like, oh, I started out, like there's folks that have been playing first edition AD&D their entire life, and they started in the 80s, and they're still playing it to this day. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I bet you $1 to a dime, they at least know more about other games. Like they know other games exist. They just choose to be in that space. So regardless, with those changes, some of us kind of acquiesce or look at things like, I don't want to drive an hour to play a game, but I'm going to try this virtual thing and see if it can capture enough of what I enjoy. And guess what? Okay, an hour drive ranks up on the 5 stars of suck, right? And then virtual play is actually 4 stars on the suck scale. So it's enough to like actually offset the 5-star suck scale. Does that sound like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like moving levers again, right? And it all depends on what our personal thresholds are. Like, I know this is all weird, maybe even woo-woo, but I'll give you an example. So I've done recruiting for a long time. And I'll tell you what, I've known people, I've done it for a while. I've known people that have gone from help desk to like director, right? Like I knew them when they were a freaking help desk guy making $15 an hour. And now they're like a director making, whatever. And they're overseeing functions and things of that nature. They're not the same person. And so when I talk to them for interviewing and what they want to do in their career, the things have changed. Like when you're that person, when you're junior, not that I don't want to say gamers are junior when they're first starting out or playing 5th edition and they, come to some epiphany where they've moved on or what have you, but it's not wholly dissimilar. what somebody wants out of a gaming experience may change over the course of their lifetime. Case in point, Shambot, hey, I'm okay with miniatures, but I don't need them every time I play, where maybe back in the day you needed more of them. I don't know. Anyways. Hey, you guys tuned into this. That's all I got to say, right? Sean, sort of also. We were all in person at the table, except Jimmy lives in another time zone. So you use a big screen for fantasy grounds so everyone can see handouts roll online. But the people at the table have paper sheets and real dice. So Laramie, for those following the conversation here, is really talking about the hybrid thing. He's like, let's talk about hybrid where you got in-person and virtual. So he's talking about literally one person being virtual, but everybody else sitting in the same table. We tried that at Jeff's briefly. It just fell apart. That's a weird experience too. If the person that's remote doesn't have a problem with it, it's great. But I used to find this too in the workplace. Now, hey, hate to bring up shop on a Sunday, folks, but there would be people where we'd have one person that always worked remote. We'd always have a meeting. We'd all go in the conference room. We'd dial the person in, and then the conversation would go, and we'd forget about the person on the phone. We're talking maybe a 6 or 7 person team, maybe 8, I don't know. But you just have to be conscious of that individual, and you have to be conscious of the fact that they're not in the same room with you. So what does that mean? What can they see? What can they not see? What are they? It's also body language. If there's no video, that can be a bigger deal. Like, man, a lot of communication gets lost without seeing body language. So that is an interesting concept. And I think that some people, probably more so than others, are probably kind of in that space. Like, dude, if that person moves, I just want to keep playing with you guys, and it sucks that I got to move. How could we do this? And if you could sustain it for both parties, like the game group, because it even then goes to the game group, then it goes to the game master. Okay, the group's fine, but then the game master has to make these, accessibility things a thing. And then the person on the other end, I think communication is going to be even bigger in those scenarios, because you have one, you kind of have, I would say, the outlier. So when things start to kind of get a little bumpy, man, this isn't great, and you're the remote person, you got to say something I can't see the board. And I think it's going to take not always, but it could take a longer time to get everybody on the same page. Because how many times are you going to have to remind the game master, hey, can you move the camera? Hey, can you point the camera at the table? Hey, I can't hear somebody. Can you get somebody to speak up louder? If you do that 30 times, hopefully the 31st time will be exponentially better, and it just becomes mechanical in nature. I think that's key, because if you just sit by and expect those changes to happen and you don't say anything, dude, you are crazy. That is not the chances of those things just coming out of somebody's butt and hey, we got to be better. It's not going to happen. Eileen says, I did that hybrid thing for Curse of Strahd. I joined via video chat from 2 time zones away. How'd it go? Wayne says, I used minis from day one, 1979, but never for every encounter. I think the undercurrent theme of Theater of the Mind being imaginatively morally superior to maps/minis is BS. Well, I would agree with that. I don't think it's superior. I would be too strong. That would be too strong. Some people will say it, but, that's just like saying 4th edition's the best edition out there or whatever. That's like arguments about the edition wars and all that other stuff. Just in case the convo was not exciting enough. Why you wanted to drop that little bomb. Daryl, I've seen some groups play online with no VTT, like 4 players and a GM. Seems to work well. I would agree with that, Daryl. So I think that's another thing too. Like, oh, we're gonna play virtually. I gotta get a virtual tabletop. I gotta have electronic character sheets, and they can just click on things. Yeah, some of those things can make things a lot better, a lot better. A lot more convenient, which I find like it'd be cool to be, even if I created my character in paper, pencil, and dice, but if I could just, hey, give me a check and you just click it and it does the check for you, great. I also think it might come with the complexity of a game as well. For example, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll kind of get into this. There was one time I was running shackles, swords and shackles, shackles and swords, shackles, whatever. It's the Pathfinder pirate arc campaign, and they, for whatever reason, all the players made up their characters, and I decided to put them into, I can't remember the app, by Lone Wolf. I have a sneeze coming on. Can't remember the app. It's still out there. I think you can buy it. And out of like 5 or 6 people, there was only one that created their character correctly. So I say this because when you get into the complexity of like making sure you have all the correct amount of points for your skills, and because what happens is if you have a lot of derived attributes, if you screw up one place, a lot of the other stuff's going to be off. Now, paper-wise, that's kind of you just got to mentally go, oops, and then correct all the references. Digitally, you correct the one screw up, and magically it corrects all the ones that are derived, typically. So I say that you could make and frankly, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't even matter. Like, even if you get the cheater in your group, what are they gonna? They're just gonna succeed on all the rolls. Fine, whatever. I don't know what kind of gaming experience they're looking for, but so sometimes I agree, Daryl. I also agree that just get what is the core of tabletop role playing games? A character, trad games, traditional tabletop role playing games. When I say traditional, that's game master, players. Game master conveys the details. The players react. And then usually there's dice that manipulate the outcomes or are used to resolve the thing, the problem. At its core, it's usually some type of face-to-face interaction between the players and the game master. And I say that could be any interaction because it could be just voice and no, I can't see you. It could be. And then you have to have the character, and then you have to have access to whatever helps resolve the thing. And if that is physical dice at your table and you roll, or it's a virtual dice thing, some GMs don't care. In our Thursday group, I'm sure Phil's not going to give a rip if I use a virtual die roll or if I use physical dice. Just give me a roll, Sean. Okay. I rolled a 19. Okay. Here's what happens. That's at its core. That's at its core whether you're at a table or you're playing virtually. I think we can all agree on that, right? That is without those, some could say, well, you could play play-by-post, which is just text. Yes, but I would say that you still have to have an interaction. So I'll just say it's an interaction amongst the members of the group. Now, it could be text, could be voice, could be, voice and video. It could be face-to-face. But that's however you want to slice it, there's got to be an interaction of ideas, thoughts, and then that's it. How you want to slice that up, how you enriched do you want to make that, that's all personal preference. You just got to boil it down to the common denominator. I play mainly play-by-post on Discord servers. Oh, you would just love Harrigan then. Harrigan. So I have a play-by-post video on this channel. Not that it would be for you, Jason, necessarily, because if you play, it's more of a, hey, if you're ever interested in play-by-post, here are some of the pitfalls. This is how it works. And Harrigan was my guest on there, member of the community and friend of mine, and and I've played with him consistently for a while now. Yeah, he uses and I can't remember the play-by-post. There's a play-by-post. He actually has a couple sites, but I think he plays more on the gamers too. Can't remember. I don't have the site bookmarked. Can't remember the name of the site, but it's in the notes of that video too. Yeah, like Laramie said, I'm behind. I'll catch up. Ted says, I've also been working remotely for the past 4+ years. It does give you a comfort interacting with people virtually that crosses over to gaming. I'd agree. The people, it's not for everybody. And there's going to be some people that just don't care for that type of interaction. Andy Hall says some GMs and players will prefer to use a VTT as a primary gaming interface. That's just not my personal preference, but I get it. Yeah. Whether that's virtually or literally at the table in person. Like Laramie was saying. Fantasy Grounds, big LCD, acts as your table. Mike, everything outside your mind is technology. Unless it's just a conversation, some tech is used to represent ideas. Objecting to the artifice of technology seems myopic to me. There's some people that will go kicking and screaming. They will go kicking and screaming, Mike. You know, they're going to be the ones that, it's a little weird sometimes, but I mean, there might be the ones out there that are like, I still handwrite letters. I don't use word processor or typewriter. Even a typewriter, it could be technology, right? We want to really get crazy. I'm looking forward to the new DMG. Actually sounds useful. I've heard good things. I'm interested to know about the Greyhawk components in that DMG. But I don't think I don't think the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide was terrible necessarily. I think a lot of people didn't read it, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of golden nuggets in there. And guilty. Like Brett and I did a role-playing podcast. We would come up with something with 5th edition that we didn't like, and then they would write in and go, you guys obviously have not read the Dungeon Master's Guide. Like, it's in there. Oh, derp. Sean's still catching up. We already got Jason 96 a chair and a drink. Oh, there you go. There you go. Shambat says, I am in the same boat, Sean. I took to moonlighting with all the other TTRPGs on my shelf. It is hard to onboard some of my old group into trying something new. Welcome, Shambat. Though some have started to look beyond the tried and true. Yes, not to be confused with the triad and true. Although the triad could be tried and true. Give me zones, all the zones. Give me zones. Right, okay, you sold me on it. With perfected holodeck technology, I will play virtually and be happy about it. Hey, there you go. Mission accomplished. But I can empathize. It's not everybody's jam. Like virtually, no matter how you slice it, even if it's like, all right, here's the deal. Roll up a character, like put it on a sheet, fill it out with pencil, have your dice at the table, and instead of coming to my house, we're going to meet online. And it's just going to be video and voice, and everybody will see each other's squares, and that's it. It's just like being face-to-face. And people will say, no, it's not, Sean. And I'll be like, oh, I get it. I totally get it. It's an environment thing. There's elements that people don't care about that interface. I get it. The holodeck. We gotta fast track that. Put that at the top project list. Orcus Dorcas. Morning, buddy. Seems I showed up late like into a philosophical talk. Well, I'm filling airtime. But this is a little I'm Orcus, it's like I should just do open mic. Like so earlier because I'm catching up. I'm like well behind. I didn't want to do the typical talk today. So I just opened it up. And that's Andy Hall proposed like virtual tabletop playing face to face and how sometimes it can get disconnected. And like many of our conversations, it's evolved. So I just heard of Who Moved My Cheese yesterday. I apparently have to write a paper on it later this semester. You're welcome. Not that you owe me any thanks, but yeah. Well, that's easy. I love both. Okay, well, have a nice day, Orcus. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for contributing. And by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm also good with both. Also, Sean's feeling ill. Yes, I feel like dog crap. I wonder if the always on initiative for Shadowdark could help with the hybrid situation. Yeah. Yes. Well, and even Index Card RPG, interesting enough, does like one of the rules it comes up with is you roll initiative, highest person starts, and then it goes clockwise. But, you know, that's another thing. Like, people are going to go, I don't like this initiative. Like, if it's centric to the game and that's how the game is, like, ruled, that's another topic that I want to talk about is rules versus rulings versus ad hoc or impromptu, like, because they're, oh man, that's a whole nother discussion. Could talk about that for another 2 hours. What I'm referring to is like, you know, we're going to play this game. This is, by the way, Outcast Silver Raiders or OSR. And you pick this book up and you read it and the player reads it and the GM reads it. And these are the rules. This is how it is supposed to be run. So when you get to initiative and you're like, well, to expedite the game, this is how I would like to do initiative. Initiative generally is handled like this. You roll once. It's a static initiative and it stays in existence until the combat is over. And it's the same every time unless you defer and you put yourself in, you know, on a different rung of initiative. But because we're playing like this, it could be faster if we do it this way. There's going to be people that fight that tooth and nail because, hey man, I'm playing this game. And this game says it's done like this. Oof. And the battle begins. Wayne says, for my weekly game, we run exploration travel maps on Foundry because we love Fog of War. We run combat sometimes Theater of the Mind, sometimes with minis on the table. Sometimes we actually use Foundry. The players mostly use pen, paper, and dice. I roll real dice on the table in front of the players. You know what? And it all comes down to if you enjoy the thing that you're doing as a game master and your players are enjoying their interaction with you and the game and the rules and the setting and all of the stuff. Great. Fantastic. This stream, typically, in the podcasts that are out there, is usually about when that stuff starts to crumble. Or people feel like, you know, have you tried this? Like, because I found that this works and it might be better for you. You never know. Sharing of ideas. You don't know what you don't know. Jason says, I do this with my Discord play-by-post for initiative. During initiative/battle, I do 1 round per play. The initiative order is when the player goes, and I'll go as the monsters when it feels right. Play-by-post, man, whole different beast. Like, you know, I think you gotta like be malleable if you're playing play-by-post. It comes with the territory. You cannot. It's 1-for-1 is very hard, I think. And he continues, if a player doesn't go during the day, which can happen, right? Like, what's the expectation? When should I post? If you're not posting within 24 hours, what happens? If a player doesn't go during the day, then they just missed their turn. There you go. Playing hybrid was okay. I'm not shy about asking for the camera to be moved or what have you. Playing 2 time zones ahead sucked. We started at 10:30 p.m. my time on a Sunday. Yikes. Yeah, long night. But we played for 2.5 years. Hey, there you go. Mr. White, it's definitely harder to read the table online versus in person. Mr. White's in my Delta Green game. That's why. Like, how far do I read into this? How you doing, Dwayne? Good to see ya. Hobbsy, GM's killing PCs. Okay, thanks. That is very valuable, Hobbsy. Orchestra, because I really don't mind what format is used online. Theater of the Mind is versus VTT, but for online play, I prefer the camera to be on for everyone. Visual engagement is important for successful online play. This brings up a good point, which is kind of like a craw for me to Orcus's point. Say you're playing like 5 people, 1 GM, 4 players, however, whatever. And one of them doesn't have their camera on. Now, we've had to have this happen because of bandwidth issues or whatever, technical snafus, maybe videos like sucking wind, sucking up bandwidth. So one person's voice and the rest are like visual. That throws me for a loop. I've had to do it in Shadowdark on occasion. I'm running my West Marches open table Shadowdark game. What? Am I? I don't know. It's such a bad time of year. I promise I'm getting back to that. Now it's caught on the internet. But there is a weird feeling when like one person just chooses not to turn on their camera. Like, I don't want to be on camera. And it could be a thing. Like, there's people that are deathly afraid of being on camera. What I find, me personally, I have to have the camera where if the group is like, say I've got the video over here, I could see the people over here and I'd be looking at them, right? Because I want to see them. My camera's over here, so it never appears that I'm actually talking to them. So I do make a conscious effort, and it probably goes to my day job, of like moving them over towards the camera so that if I'm actually, looking at them, it seems as though I am physically looking at them. Does that make sense? I know you guys know what I'm talking about. Trust is a wonderful thing. It is rare to see a DM allow physical roles when playing online. Yeah, but why? Why? Trust is, that is a can of worms. I have a theory on trust. Want to hear my theory on trust? My theory on trust with modern games like maybe non-OSR, that's not necessarily true, but more modern games, like I would say 3.0 and on, in the traditional space of fantasy, specifically in the Ds and Ds. Trust, I think, has changed gaming. I think that is at the core element, is the trust component that Jason mentions. Again, no statistical values behind any of this stuff, but I think because the trust has been fractured since the olden days, where I would pull up a game and I would make rulings over rules. And, some people would say, if you're playing this game, it is a framework for me to house rule and inject my own rulings and things of that nature and rules as we come across them. I think that has led to, I don't trust the game. I don't trust Sean because every time I try to do X, he smashes me. And so therefore, there are games that have been created that make the player's guide and say everything in here is what you're allowed to do, and everything in here is what the game master is allowed to do or not do. Are we both on the same page? Right? Because then I can do that. It says it right here in the text. And I think some of the games, and sometimes it's like the games will say, well, the game master has kind of the last say. And there'll be an argument at the table based around just that. A scenario will present itself. The player character will say, this is what I'm going to do. And the game master will be say, no, you can't do that. Or yes, you can do that, but this is a drawback, or this is what may happen if you decide to go that route. And the player will look at the book and say, no, it says right here, I can do this, and this is what happens. And then it's just agree to disagree. I disagree. Let's go to blows. It goes all over the spectrum of, and so it's partly game group chemistry and the game itself, but trust is a huge issue, and I think that has really formed how some of these games are designed. Yeah. Some games are actually better online. Crunchy tactical games are aided greatly with automation in a VTT. Eileen says, I allow physical roles online. If I can't trust someone to not cheat, I'm probably not wanting to play with them to begin with. You ever play with like the one person that always wins? That always seems to like succeed? I'd agree with the camera being on for folks. I mean, if there is like, hey, my camera's broken, I'm getting another one, right? But a lot of these things that we're talking about is like the social contract. What's expectations, right? It's not even in the game. It's like, what are we all agreeing to when we sign up for this thing? Hobbs says, I make all you cheaters roll virtual dice, especially Wayne. There you go. Thrown down. And Mr. White 20. Yeah, definitely don't trust his rolls. There's nothing wrong with requiring video, like running a game at a con. GMing online is a different style than in person. It requires a different tool set to adequately run your game. And it's nothing wrong as long as you're very clear about it. And that's the thing. I've talked about this before. Opt in. If you can swing it with players, it's an opt-in thing. So instead of the game master saying, here's the deal, this is the way it's going to be. Well, let me rephrase that. Instead of like the player characters coming and saying, here's kind of what I want to play. Well, it's a combination. I'm starting to get in my own brain, obviously, because I'm not forming a very cohesive thought here. But opt in. If you said, here's the game I'm going to run. It's going to be online. Video cameras have to be on. Unless, of course, it's like a mechanical malfunction. But if you don't have a webcam after like the first or second session, sorry, you got to boot you. Going to run virtual dice. Bam, 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 bam. We're going to be on every Thursday at 8 o'clock Central Time. Soft start 8, hard start 8:30. Right? One person, hey, I'm going to be a little late. Got to pick up the kids. There's always exceptions to the rules because life is not perfect. It's the repetition, the violation of some of these things that just wreak havoc on people or game groups. There goes my camera again because I'm using my freaking hands. But once you get all of the things, if you can remember all of the things, because what'll happen is you'll be like, well, you never stated that. And then it comes up, and then it's a surprise, and then it crumbles apart. And then you stipulate all these details. The players could do the same thing, right? Okay, I agree to all these. Oh, and Mrs. Game Master, here are some of the things on the player side. Although it's very GM-centric in some of these games, like they're the person, right? The law, if you will. But if you have all that stuff in and you read it and you're like, nope, 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 then that is not the game for you. I don't hate to oversimplify it, but oof. Tried playing virtual without cameras and it's just not for me. Concur. I agree. I'm the same. Isn't that what you do every week? No. Would you rather have a holodeck or something like Westworld? I don't want to play the game. Like I don't want to be virtually dressed up. Although I don't know. I say that now and then I'll put on an Oculus and like choose my character and I look down and I'm like, oh, and I look in a mirror in the virtual world and I go wandering around picking pockets. I don't know if I want to do that. That's two different things. I think that is similar to, do you want to play a computer video game, MMORPG, right? Like Baldur's Gate 3. There's a guy I know who's like, hey, if you ever want to play, let me know. We could do co-op. And I'm like, I haven't played a computer game in years. Like tabletop's my jam. And I would say to him, hey, you ever want to play tabletop? You let me know, you know? I think that would be my response, Ryan, is that if you're good doing either, fine. But I think there's I've seen Westworld. Isn't Westworld like isn't it a huge holodeck? Or is it like physical existence, but it's in a contained area? I don't remember. Sean, ignorance. I'd rather have the holodeck over robots. Yeah. Because let's not trust robots completely. I mean, that's how you get Terminator. Today's episode feels like a palate cleanser for the normal stream. Not sure if one was needed, but the open chat has been nice. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the feedback, seriously. And I appreciate any of the feedback. If you guys are like, you know what? They probably bounced. Like, oh, this is not for me, boink. Instead of like letting me know. Can we just play D&D now? Isn't that it? Isn't that right, Hobbs? Hobbs. Can we just play D&D now? OSR. Hobbs and friends of the OSR. I really like the inventory scarcity check mechanic in Outcast Silver Raiders, Ryan says. Yes. Yes, and? Phil, Outcast Silver Raiders on my radar. Definitely want to give that a spin. I could. I'm giving it a spin at GHC first time. I don't know how it's going to go. Because some of it's a hex crawl, but it's not West Marches. So the design principle is interesting in this specifically. This is the biggest book of the trifecta. So if you're not familiar with Outcast Silver Raiders, on a tangent, it's by Isaac Van Duyn, Kim Diaz-Holm, and Lex Rocket. And on the back, I'll even read it. It says, Outcast Silver Raiders is a blood-drenched occult medieval role-playing game in the old-school tradition. In my humble opinion, if you do not jam on that, you are like, I'm out. But if it's intriguing to you, I continue. Inspired by Scotland circa 1200 CE, the mythic North is an epic setting, a massive low-prep hex crawl detailing a frigid land of mountains, heather, crumbling castles, and ancient stones. There are no wizard guilds, no orcs or dwarves. Monsters exist, but only as legends haunting distant reaches. The Ascendant Church hunts down any hint of magic, and witches and enchanters practice their forbidden arts only in secret. Lords command, knights ride to battle, and peasants die in the mud. 88 detailed encounters, The book is intended for an adult audience. So that's like, if they were saying, hey, who would like this? This is what it's about. Person who likes it, person who doesn't like it. This is what it's about. Like, I think that sums it up. But it's the Mythic North book is pretty damn cool in the way that they kind of explain the design and how they want the game to kind of be is, You hex crawl. There are factions that exist, but that anything that kind of happens within the realm of the game happens through the player character's eyes. So it's not like here's the, module, if you will. And these are all the things that's going to happen as the players encounter, because it's very much supposed to be spontaneous. You roll randomly as a game master. So while there are things to interact with, like it's not a blank slate, but you can roll on certain tables, and then those things you present to the player characters that impact all of the other things. And as play progresses, things will move, change. Sean, you want to hear my theory? Everyone here, we're here, aren't we? We are here. Somehow. That's why Gumshoe exists. So this is probably on the trust thing, right? It's less an inventive design for investigation in RPGs and more a vindictive Robin Law's upset he kept failing his search and library use rolls. Yeah. This game's really making me mad. I'm going to rewrite it. I'll write my own. I played with both camera on and off. It's fine to me if with folks you've been playing with for years. Fair. It's an open table. I'd prefer camera on. Tad says, agree that this is a fun format to put it on the mix occasion. I will do that then. 2 people chimed in. I will then therefore do it. I think this type of discussion does enhance some of the conversation. People have strong opinions, and it might probably be a little bit more valuable than, hey, this is out in print news today. It's just my take. I have OSR, but haven't messed with it once I heard Sean was running it at GHC. Because he probably doesn't want all the spoilers. Cool, man. Did you say hex crawl? I'm trying to make one, and it seems like there are a million ways to do it. Yeah, for sure. Yes, as 5 game masters, how to best run a hex crawl. You will probably find a couple common themes. And then that's the thing. That's with gaming in general. Like West Marches, that was one of the things about West Marches is like you can interview 4 people about West Marches, and there is a commonality between them, but there is like some keen differences on how people are going to use, like, how do we handle resources? And sometimes it's by the game that they choose, and sometimes it's the game that they choose and then they modify it. It's like, what? That's the beauty of the hex crawl. Or one of them. That's definitely a game description that sings to me. Yeah, it's not Merc Borg, but there you can see some of it, Phil, for sure. It's not as hardcore, but, Magic's like, that's taboo, man. Oops, that sounds like a great name for a podcast, Hex Talk. It does sound like one. You know anything about that? Nelson, I like the conversation. I also like your take on news. Whatever works for you. Okay, good to know. Thanks, Nelson. Nelson's like a little bit of both. Reading the back of the book just sold me on it. I'm definitely buying it. Bam. Convert. For Roger's Wallet, I apologize. So just so you know, not to get on a Outcast Silver Raiders kick, but it's I don't know if you can buy them separately. Can you, Hobbs? I don't think you can. It comes in a slipcase of 3 books. And there's a map. And the map is keyed. And this is look at this. So I would just, for comparison purposes, setting, player's guide, GM guide, or it's referee's compendium. So the referee's compendium clocks in at, where's the page number? 140, just over 140 pages. The player's guide clocks in at just like 58, right? So this is what the players need: how to create a character, kind of some of the rules and how it works, and the resolution mechanics. And then the referee's compendium gets into much more tables. Maybe I should do something on this game. The classes, some other things. But the setting is the thickest. Like, it's the beast. This thing is what? 300, over 314 pages. So, yeah. But it's grimy, dirty. Kidding about cat talk. I didn't even see that. I like the conversation. I was like your take on news, but whatever works for it. Just no cat talk. It's a joke. Well, the good news is I have a kitten now, and that guy is a spaz. But let's not get into that. It's a good mix of topics. I think the Kino is great. No cat talk. Meow. Got my interest. So tired of high fantasy with too much magic. Well, that'll fix that for sure. That'll fix that for sure, Daryl. I've embraced the high fantasy with too much magic. I'm experiencing that with how I can make it fun and interesting by getting the playing to doing something besides their first optimal options. Here's the deal. I love Eberron. And if you don't know much about Eberron, people are like, Eberron's so high magic. So there's that debate. But Eberron is, what if magic were like everyday technology? So case in point, Eberron, ever-burning torches are like everywhere because they just light the streets with them. Because if you can cast them and they're like common, then there's like a guild that just makes them all the time and imbues items with that. And then they put them in little lights instead of like having the lanterns, lamp lighters, and like Brett's, game going around lighting parts of a urban landscape, right? And they use elementals that are bound to things that allow transportation to be quicker. If that is not your jam, I understand. It is not traditional, like, sword and sorcery fantasy, like Tolkien-esque stuff. It also offers you an interesting dynamic if those are some of the things that you want to, like, you kind of want to paint the setting with, but at the, you want to do espionage or intrigue or, exploration, there's still elements in that game that you can use, like a sending stone. You can go buy a sending stone. What does that allow you to do? Well, you got a rock and another person has a rock, and you can talk back and forth between the rocks. And that's kind of the magic behind it. So it's like taking more, I think, what could be elements of a modern setting and dumping it into a fantasy-rich setting, but it's not medieval fantasy, right? If that is not your jam, you will hate that setting. Like, that's too much magic, Sean. Got it. But I like that for certain games. I also think it's very much pulp and noir, and it does tout it. Some people say it probably runs better in Savage Worlds. Ask Christian Serrano. He did a whole conversion for it. But now I'm kind of like, I don't know. Some of this stuff, like, yeah, magic is like, you use it, it's wild, it's crazy, it's gonna be a mess. It's dangerous. It's not willy-nilly. It takes its toll on a person, but it could be very powerful. Like, if you're like into that space, then there's other games and other settings. And I think that's kind of Outcast or Silver Raiders. Like, it's taboo, man. If you're messing with that stuff, that's burn them at the stake. Sounds like I need to get more into Eberron. Eberron is fantastic. I will say, if you are interested in Eberron, and the best book to get is the original Eberron campaign setting for 3.5. It just is. It just sums it up very well. And over the editions, they've added and changed some things, but I really think the Eberron 3.5 book is the way to go. If you really want, like, what it's about, what it does, what it provides, and then you can go buy and it's used. You can buy it used, and it probably save you a few bucks, assuming it's, like, not being hoarded and the price has been jacked up because of demand and supply. We call those Rocky Talkies. Yeah, baby. Do you really? Or did you just come up with that, Shambot? Jason, I could try a setting where magic is like meth. See how it all plays out. Well, there you go. Yeah. There you go. Been on here for almost an hour and 46 minutes. Thought it was going to be a short one, but you guys kept me engaged. Thank you. I much appreciate it. I don't know what else to talk about. I mean, we talked about virtual, talked a little bit about Outcast Silver Raiders, a little bit trust we touched on. It's all good conversation, all good stuff. I like it. Anything to get you guys, like, the brains, the brain, the wheels turning into brains. And I've been here printing character sheets for Gamehole. There you go. I have that Eberron, one of the only D&D books I have anymore besides Keys from the Golden Vault. That's cool. Very cool. Well, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Hope you. So typically I do this on Saturdays. So if you're like, oh, Sundays this works perfect, I'll throw a wrench in that, because usually it's Saturdays at 8 a.m. Central Time, but you can always catch the replay. And it's usually not as discussion based. Usually I go through, like, crowdfunding campaigns and what's new in print news. And frankly, I kind of like, I don't know if I want to keep doing that type of format, but to Nelson's point, it's good to know kind of what else is coming, what else is out there. So I may just trim that back a little bit, or I could do it in like 2, half hour dedicate to this, the other 45 minutes dedicate to that. But regardless, you guys have been champs. Get me thinking. You get me thinking. And that's a good thing. And it's been a good, positive interaction. None of you guys came in there and slammed all kinds of stuff. And if you do, just so you know, I bring up this disclaimer because some of us know each other. So if there's a dig in the chat, it's because the person knows the other person. Okay, it's not, we will protect those that, like, come in and, like, what's this overly hostile environment? Like, we don't slam Cypher System because Eileen will come in and bash everybody's heads in. No, she won't. I'm just kidding. But she is a Cypher System fan. Probably doesn't hurt that she worked for Monty Cook Games. Andy Hall, thanks, man. Bonus 1,000 XP to you, sir. Bonus XP to you. Thanks for bringing up the topic and spurring some good discussion. Much appreciated. Yeah. Well, and I was thinking, I mean, the reason I do it on Saturdays at 8 is many times, at least in my world, there's not a lot going on that early in the morning for some of us. And it's like, we don't, some of us, like, the kids are still kind of sleeping or, what have you. And I'm kind of just filling my coffee cup and just getting the day started. You could flip this on. It's not overly video intensive. Like, I bring up covers and read things and things of that nature, but it's just enough where you can maybe tune out, walk away, come back. The chat is the sixth man, right? If you're a basketball fan, chat sixth man for sure. Might even be the starting center, actually. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Usual news is handy too. It'll be a balance. Message received. Thank you for the feedback. Sometimes you don't get that. Like, you keep doing something and, like, people kind of float away. It gets boring. And, like, I watched Sean for like a couple years and it was fun. And I just kind of like, moved on to different things. I probably lost some people because of that. And that's okay. But if I had known, maybe I could do a balance. So feedback is always great. So being unemployed, you'll have to up your campaign count. Oh, shit. Oh, God. I wish. Right now, so just as an update for most of you, so what Sean got going on right now, some of you probably know. I have a Delta Green game that I have to wrap up. Mr. White 20 is in that. Probably a session or two left in that. I haven't forgotten about it. It's just a bad time of year right now. But I'm going to wrap that up. I run West March's Shadowdark. I have to kind of fire that up and offer some dates up and get that going again. That's kind of been on hiatus for longer than I've wanted and anticipated. I'm back. I would say I'm kind of back with the Thursday night group, with Phil and Wayne that are in the chat with a couple others. Phil ran the One Ring 2nd edition, as I mentioned earlier. It was my first time I ever played it. It was a great game. Getting kind of the details. Some guys did pre-gens. I decided to make my own because I wanted to, I just wanted to figure out more about like the game and sometimes you can learn more about the game through character creation than playing it, or it complements it anyway for me. So did that. Got some pieces I'm trying to get out of my brain, like Journey and some things being less granular than some other games I've been used to. So do that because one of the guys has kind of got a rough season, so he's kind of out. So we're kind of doing pickup games until he gets back. Game Hole Con is coming up next week. So next week, yeah. So next week, Saturday, I think I have a game during the stream. So I don't think I'm going to be able to stream next weekend. I usually stream every week. Like even today where I couldn't make it yesterday, I did it today. I don't think I'm going to be able to reschedule unless I do like a Sunday stream. I could next week, but I don't know if I would do it from home or from Game Hole Con. I'll try to put out an update for those that may be interested, but that would be the reason why I'm not here. And usually I post to Discord like, hey, I'm not going to stream. Just want to let you know. But not everybody's on our Discord. So they're like, hey, man, what's going on? At Game Hole Con, I am running Deathmatch Island. Like Laramie, I too have been doing some prepping and printing. It's like the only time of year I use our printer and figure out why things are getting not printing correctly. So Deathmatch Island by Evil Hat. 2 sessions of that on grid. Games are full, 4 players. Deathmatch Island, if you're not familiar with it, I don't know how it's going to go over. I have never run it before. So yeah, why not during a con game where people are like, this will be fun. Dude, didn't even know the rules, man. But it's like very, like the book is very like TM technical manual looking. It's inspired by things like Running Man and Survivor and other stuff, where you go on an island to to survive. It's like what's the Korean game? The Korean show. What is dude? Squid Games. I beat you guys to it. Squid Games, like very much like that. So interesting mechanics, role playing. It even had like I gotta say this. I give it a lot of credit. Oops. Not to get on this tangent, but I haven't like I guess I gotta put these together. So like when I hand this, here's a character sheet. We're gonna do character creation at the table. And one of the things it does is it sums up the rules. So they can just read this. This is kind of what the rules are. Oh, I got to read all that? Probably not. And then there's also a sheet that kind of says, hey, here's kind of the principles of the game. So it's a little bit more, you kind of got to lean on the role play piece because it's not like you're warrior badass and I'm going to create warrior badass character, right? You're normal people and it's the dynamics of like you're basically thrust onto an island and you're not sure why. and you don't know what to do. And it's a competition that has obviously hit you in the face. So there are prompts through the game that kind of facilitate those interactions. It's not for everybody, but it's going to be an interesting game, I think, for the most part. Role players probably won't like the game. Like rolling dice players probably won't like the game. But I think it's going to be unique. I wanted to dress up in like a tweed 70s game show, like flatten my hair and part it down the side and have a long microphone, but getting props is like a pain in the butt, just so you know. Then I'm going to run Outcast Silver Raiders for a pickup game or two at the table, bring some character sheets, do character gen, doesn't take too long, and see what the folks are made of. And then I will probably play in a pickup game of Outgunned with Mirko. Hoos is running one, but I don't think I can make that one. So that's my Gamehole Con experience. That'll be starting like kind of Wednesday of next week. Yeah, that's what Sean's got going on in the gaming sphere right now. Battle Royale, baby. You know the deal. Are you dressing up in plaid sports coat and I'm long? I wish I could. I don't have one, and I don't want to run around and try to find one. I want to be more like prepared. Like, here's how the game goes, than like, hey, here's all the flash and no substance. I dress up like a guy with a mohawk and a hockey sweater. Yes. So if you're at Gamehole Con and you want to know who Laramie is, oh, that guy. So yeah, don't forget to prep, everybody. All right. I want to thank everybody that joined me. Thank you all for showing up. I appreciate it. If you haven't given me a like, I really appreciate it. Unlike podcast reviews, likes actually help. So, and you know what? If you didn't like it, hey, thumbs down. Or you might have already left, and you could have done that before you left. But nonetheless, I want to thank all these individuals. They've been patrons of mine for quite some time, supporting me over the months. So thank you very much. I appreciate your support. Thanks for the supporters on the YouTubes that have opted to go through YouTube. Thank you. You should be listed in that list too. And if not, I should probably fix that. Thank you so much. Yeah, he didn't know the rules, but he looked great. Exactly. Well, hey. We should call those looking good games. Hey, was it a looking good game or was it an actual, good game? Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. And remember, be a positive force in a tabletop RPG hobby. Spend some time with yourself. Spend times with others that you appreciate. And, of course, keep gaming. And hope to check you on the next one. See ya.